2, 1.
Hi, good evening. My name is Luke and I'm the director of Blue Beyond. And this evening we are joined by the Blue Collar Conservatives. Founded 8 years ago, the Blue Collar Conservatives have become one of the foremost caucuses and pressure groups from within the Conservative Party, unashamedly championing the interests of working class people and speaking directly to the communities that have been most neglected by Labour over the last 10 years. Their influence has grown substantially over the last 8 years. Now representing around 160 MPs within Parliament, they were pivotal in our most recent Red Wall election. And this evening, we're going to be asking two of the most important figures in the Blue Collar Conservatives what they think education is going to look like in the wake of coronavirus. Set up by Esther McVeigh. Esther McVeigh was elected in 2010 and has had an incredibly extensive career in politics, working in multiple briefs, including housing and work and pensions. But more recently, she was extremely influential during the Brexit process in advocating for a WTO exit. She is now the president of the Blue Collar Conservatives and handed over to Mr. Ben Bradley MP, who is a born and bred Midlands MP. He is not afraid to get his hands dirty because when he was younger, he did all sorts of different jobs in pubs and stacking shelves. But as an MP, he has been an extremely powerful voice for working class communities, turning his small majority in 2017 into an extremely safe seat in Mansfield, something that we could have never even envisaged around 15 years ago. They're also joined by Gabriel Baraldi, who is a dedicated environmental campaigner, but also has been an A-level student during the coronavirus pandemic, and he'll be talking about his experiences this evening. And finally, we're joined by Mr. James Ussell, who is a journalist at the Glasgow Guardian, but is much more well known for his overnight sensation campaign, Defund the BBC. Now, that's it from me. You're not going to hear anything else from me. I'm going to hand over to our fantastic hosts, Olivia Lieber and Abby Jones. Olivia Lieber is one of my deputies, but she was also the founding president of the University of Liverpool Young Conservatives. And she's also joined by our university liaison leader, Abby Jones, who is also the president of the University of Reading Conservatives. Thank you very much, guys, and enjoy the event.
Thank you, Luke, and we'll now start our first round. Thank you to all our panel for joining us. So our first topic that we'll be speaking about is, has the coronavirus response been a success or has it been a failure? So lockdown started on the 23rd of March, and from that, Boris Johnson decided to shut our schools. So when we polled our Beyonders this week, 350 agreed with the schools shutting and 223 disagreed with this. So Esther, what are your opinions on schools shutting? Should we have shut these schools?
I think you've got a long way to go to see what happens with coronavirus, and you say success or failure. I think the most difficult times are ahead. I really do. And how I see this is a fundamental curb on our freedoms. And what does that mean? I don't mean free to roam. I don't mean a sort of a trivial thing, free to go out, but that actually meant in that ability to go out and do things. One of those things was school and was education, was the chance to succeed, was the ability to have social mobility, to have, as we'd metaphorically say, doors open up to you should you wish to go forward. Now, when we give up our freedoms and curb those opportunities that I fundamentally, as a Conservative, believe in, let's see what is going to happen. You will have a raft of children from a range of homes, probably maybe the poorest homes, who will not have the ability to have the education they otherwise would have had. So when you say a curb on our freedoms, it is a curb on every one of us to achieve. And what we'll see is a polarization of society. And that is what we should be very frightened of. So those who can do, those with money are allowed to, those with connections will get on, and those of us who don't, and somebody like me from a Barnardo's home, from a poor background, might not have had those opportunities if somebody wasn't good enough to open up their home, open up their school, open up their business. So I would say, be very guarded about closing down the doors and opportunities that are open to you. And we now must fight very strongly to get schools opened up.
Thank you, Esther. That's a really interesting point. So, Ben, what do you feel? Because obviously you are a working class MP. So how do you feel like that's affected your constituents? And do you feel like there is a lost generation there?
I think there was before anyway, to be totally honest. I think it's hugely challenging to deal with things in hindsight. You know, we can only go on what we knew at the time. At the time, it seemed like closing down schools was the right thing. And I think it's understandable as to why government decided to do that. Governments all around the world decided to do that. So it's not unusual. I think now we know where we are. We know that this thing's not going away and we're going to have to ultimately live with it. And there's every reason and incentive, both educational and political, to make sure that they're open fully in September. I think that's the minimum expectation from parents and kids. And there might be a battle with unions and other people to make sure that we can do that, but I think that's absolutely imperative. The challenge is mainly, I think, for communities like mine in Mansfield, where there are a higher proportion of people who are behind in terms of attainment, who are behind in terms of education to get on and do well. That's only been exacerbated by the lockdown. So we found that some of the best private schools are putting on 4 hours of Zoom lessons a day, whereas other schools are doing nothing. And it's more likely the most disadvantaged kids, those who are most likely to be behind in the first place, who needed the most support in the first place, who are likely to have missed out even more so. People who weren't managing to get there to the required standards in terms of English and maths, for example, are also most likely to have not been in school since March. So there's a big piece of work to do now when we do get everybody back to do that catch up, to use this money that's been put forward in the best possible way, target it at the right people. And I think the big challenge for government and from the DfE now is how they pick that up and make sure that those particularly disadvantaged young people, either financially or educationally, get that support going forward.
Yeah, thank you. So on your point of kind of how private schools are putting on 4 hours of Zoom lessons and some state schools are not giving anything towards their children. So Gabriel, you're in education at the minute, you're a college student, you've just received your A-level results. So that means that for you spent a big bulk of lockdown, would have been doing exams, but not been doing so. How do you feel like you've been supported in under 18s education by your teachers?
So essentially, what happened was during lockdown, there was almost this sense from an A-level perspective. It was almost kind of like, what is the point of studying? There wasn't that much point in studying. I even remember actually that a week before lockdown happened, I had a meeting with my head teacher as I was the student president, and everything just seemed so uncertain. And, now things are becoming a little bit more clearer. And obviously, as Ben said, there is this more sense of direction. But as it was back then, at that particular time when it all happened, everything was just so all over the place and we didn't know what could have happened. But, as a student, there was this feeling of like despair when it all happened. We didn't know when it was going to last until, I remember the day that I got sent home from college. I wasn't expecting it at all. I just showed up to lessons and the teacher was like, all right, you're going home. And I was like, what? So it was, it was a really confusing time for me. But I feel like as a student, my college have supported me. The teachers have kept in touch with me to make sure that I'm all right and everything. So I did feel like I was supported. But of course, it was very uncertain, the whole event itself right from the beginning.
That's really great to hear. And James, you're a university student at the minute at the Uni of Glasgow. So obviously you, in essence, in some sort of terms, pay for your tuition fees. Do you feel like you've received very much fair support there? Because we've heard all sorts of things from uni students in that they've been given deadline extensions that are very relaxed and lucrative that last for months. And then some students were given just a 48 hours notice of an extension deadline. Some people not even getting lecture slides, where some have had hours on end of recordings from lectures. What do you feel that uni students have received through this pandemic? Do you think they've been fairly supported, or do you feel like they've been hindered?
Well, I think every university was different. I think that's very clear. Like at Glasgow, they did a brilliant job in terms of communicating us, and they actually gave us, the real story. They were like, we don't know exactly what's going on. So we got sent home in March, I think it was. But good and eventually I go now. Main was that when I was last year, we got second, but I think it was a good thing. But can I come back to what the response to say? I mean, firstly, I need to establish the fact that I'm a 19-year-old history student. I'm in no way qualified to answer questions on virology, but I don't think this should be a question of response, because we need to consider a range of factors that led to our decision making and to the statistics we're seeing today. Because I'm seeing people nonchalantly compare our statistics to Sweden and Germany, but the reality is far more complex. We've got different health systems, populations, tolerances, climates, geographies, densities. Hindsight is a wonderful thing, but now we can all see that the UK made a little bit of mistakes in the way. At the end of the day, I feel like the government, like our country, acted on the advice of their scientific advisors in the face of a completely unknown virus. So for me, this pandemic should be more about judging whether our response was a success or failure. It should be about what has it shown us in the grand scheme of things. It has shown us that China is not our friend, that the NHS is a deeply flawed health system. And I think most crucially, it has shown us the importance of civil liberties and, the need for stronger protection of them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you. Unfortunately, we did miss the start, but maybe that's put a great case forward to some better broadband around the UK. But now I feel like we will be moving on to our Mentimeter. So Josh, please, could you put that up now? And if you could all please vote on whether you think that coronavirus has been a success or a failure. So while we're just waiting for some technical difficulties with our Mentimeter, so do we all feel like we've coped well in lockdown? Do you have children yourselves that have had, some educational issues, or do you feel like you've coped quite well at home? Ben and Esther, yourselves, trying to keep down?
Okay, so what I did when we started coronavirus, I thought it needed to be chronicled as a unique period in history. So we set up Blue Collar Conversations podcast. So I spoke to people who ran nursery schools. What was the impact going to be on very young children? And they thought it was probably going to be devastating, and you'd probably have a generation of children where you'd had generation X and you'd had generation Y, you'd probably have generation COVID. And again, they saw the polarization. Those children who were more exuberant and outgoing would become incredibly so, and young children who were shy and quiet would become incredibly so. So they saw that there. I spoke to university students, again, a very varied response. Some universities had dealt with it very well, some very, very badly and had let the students down. And again, I've spoke to schools in the most deprived areas, and they think education will probably fundamentally change. It will probably be a week on, week off. You won't have school holidays the way you have. Teachers will obviously have their holidays, but you'll double the number of teachers there and have this constant having some kids in, some days, some not, some in, some not, to cope with social distancing, but to make sure that you have contact with children, because it's not just about the whether you've got iPads at home, whether you've got broadband at home. It could be that English is your second language. I was dealing with schools in Bradford, in the city London, and in the city Manchester. What we have done by stopping a whole generation going to school, it's not just that, it's from zero right the way through, and the impact on their lives. That's why it is imperative people are back in school in September. And remember, the young are least affected health-wise by coronavirus, but they will now possibly be the most affected in their opportunities, their jobs and their education.
Ben, what do you think? Do you feel like children in your constituency have coped? Do you have children of your own? And have you found that educating at home while also trying to work, it's been a massive stress? Because personally, my mum's had to educate my brother while she's trying to work, and it's been quite difficult and hard to handle. So do you feel like the government could have provided more support so that people could do two things at once? What are your feelings on that?
I think it's hugely challenging, and the thing that sticks out most for me is the disparity between different people's experiences. So you've got, people like me and my family, where my wife works in a supermarket, which means we're both kind of classed as key workers. We've both been working. Kids have been at school. So, we've almost carried on as normal, although school's been very different to what it has been. We've been at work and we've not been negatively affected kind of financially and stuff like that. Whereas for other people, they've been furloughed or they've been isolating and they've not left the house for months, and life has totally changed beyond recognition. So there's always going to be a massive challenge for government and for every institution in terms of squaring that circle between people's totally different experiences of what's happened. And there's never going to be a right answer that suits everybody from that perspective. But I certainly agree with Esther that I think, the younger generation in terms of their kind of development are going to be most affected by what's happened, particularly not even about GCSEs and A-levels in the last few weeks, but primary school kids who've been off school for 6 months, and for their own kind of development, their personality, their social skills is hugely important. And we know that those kind of earlier years are really important for long-term development. And this funding and support that they're going to get when they go back in September needs to be really targeted and prioritised. I hope the DfE, and I'm certainly pushing the DfE to look at how we can overcome some of these barriers and do the catch-up effectively, if you can ever do the catch-up, because otherwise you're going to find that if kids haven't seen their friends for 6 months, mine is 6 and 4, right? And that's a huge challenge. They're fortunate in that they were able to go to school a few days a week while my wife was working. But some of their friends, they'll come around to play now, and they don't know how to act around other kids anymore. And that's a hugely difficult thing to overcome. So I think, as has been said before, it was the right thing at the time, and you act on the best information that's available, but it's going to be a big barrier for some kids that we've got a hell of a challenge on to try and deal with.
That's really great. Thanks for those points. So our Mentimeter results have now come in. Sorry, everybody, for the technical difficulties that we have experienced. We couldn't be making a better case for better tech and better broadband in the UK right now through this event. So 73% have said that the coronavirus response has been a success, with only 26% saying that this has now been a failure. So that's some interesting food for thought for this event. So we'll now hand on to Abby, who's our student liaison lead, and she will take you through to the second round of questions.
Hi everyone. So our second question of the evening is, should the government invest money in the educational projects, or any educational projects, and scrap projects such as HS2? So Esther, do you want to go first?
Well, I'm absolutely think we need to scrap HS2. If ever there was a time to say we don't need train lines, we need not high speed 2, but high speed broadband, now is the time. When you look at the number of people going on trains, it is 80% lower than it was pre-COVID. Social distancing is here for some time to come. People are still, scared, fearful of going out. The bill is 100 billion and still growing. What we need as has already been said, is connectivity across the whole country. So you've got a bill for high speed 2, which is, as I said, 100 billion going upwards, and for connectivity for the whole country. And I'm talking 1 gigabyte capability is probably 35 billion. Now, if we look going forward, not only do we need connectivity, we also will be needing to look at the money the country has got, the support we need, and how that money is best spent. So if you do high-speed broadband, there is jobs there, obviously, delivering it, doing it, getting it done. It's going to be at a cheaper price, and it is going to be for everybody, because I can see university students still being taught online. I can see education in school still being a blended learning. People will be wanting to still work from home, not just if they don't want to travel on a train, but actually they can save money, save time, have a better quality of life. So the whole world has changed post-COVID. Pre-COVID, I didn't think there was a proper business case for high-speed 2, but it is absolutely not there in any sense whatsoever. We need to scrap it, put the money into whatever you want, but definitely broadband for education, and whether it is roads or local connectivity, because we're now into local communities, and most of our local communities don't have buses, don't have trains. We can't get around. We need to put that money into our local communities and connectivity.
Perfect, thank you. So Gabriel, what do you think? As somebody who has just left college, obviously educational projects is something that would interest you and would matter to you probably more than a lot of people. So what do you think?
I just believe that HS2 is a long-term project that's not actually looking into the future. I mean, if anything, what lockdown has shown us is how capable we are of working online and how that actually works as well. But one of the things that concerns me a lot about HS2 as well is the environmental impact, the destruction of ancient woodlands has been published over and over again. And actually, I would much rather see a future in which people in their local communities are working from there, and that we have that decent broadband there working so that people can work online. In the future, we're going to move more and more and more towards online working. And as I said, this project isn't necessarily looking into the future. It's trying to still develop in this position, in this mindset of the past. So I would rather see this, as Esther said, anywhere. Education would be great. We're really going to need that money now. This has been a very tough time for everyone. It's been a very tough time financially as well. And seeing it invested in education would be great. But as I said, anywhere else would be good. The costs are huge for this project as well. I just feel like there's so many other options that we can have that goes around this. And as someone who is an environmentalist, it's hard to look at this project and just see the benefits of it from an environmental perspective, as well as all of these other cost perspectives as well. So yeah, that's my opinion on it. I mean, I do think that it should be scrapped.
Perfect, thank you. Ben, what do you think?
The fence on this one, which is maybe an odd position, but from a national perspective, I kind of agree with what's been said, in that if the business case was flaky before, clearly it's more so now, with probably less need for that capacity and more people kind of accepting. One of the things that I don't think will change back, if you've not been going to the office, you probably will continue to not go to the office, and that fundamentally changes our economy. My next door neighbour works in the NHS as a kind of troubleshooter type of person, and used to go weekly to Cardiff for a 2-hour meeting that it will never do again, because there is just no point. There is no sense in doing that. So it fundamentally changes our economy. The reason I say I'm on the fence is that it does have benefits for my constituency and my community. So from that perspective, the line running through Nottinghamshire with stations at Towton and Chesterfield will directly impact on my community and the jobs that will be created, building the line, but also through, in the longer term, the hub around those stations in terms of the connectivity of in terms of transport connectivity for siting businesses around my constituency, and job creation hugely important to my neck of the woods. So I'm reluctant in many ways to slate it too much, because I think the benefits, selfishly perhaps, for my part of the world are tangible. But we do need to accept, certainly in the longer term, that this is not a temporary shift in the way people work. The opportunity that comes from more people working from home, doing more things online, more meetings on Zoom, right, is that more people actually can have their business in a Mansfield or a Rother Valley or a Bishop Auckland. You don't need to live in London. You don't need to commute to London. And you can do that from home. You can run a business from home more easily, which presents a massive opportunity for places like mine. When you're talking to young people about opportunities to get into jobs, you're not going to have to move away and never come back. We can kind of stop the brain drain in many ways of people feeling like they can't get on in their own community that they grew up in. So if we can grasp the opportunity, I'd be reluctant to scrap HS2 because of the selfish reasons, perhaps for my own community, but others as well. If I lived in Norwich, I might feel very differently. But we have to do both, right? We have to grasp the opportunity of remote working and what that means for the economy of the future and the jobs of the future, if we're going to level up communities like mine and give young people that kind of aspiration to be able to get where they want to get, but feel like they can do it closer to home.
Okay, and James, what do you think? Obviously, you're a student, so I guess you could see the educational benefits from it, but then if you are based in Scotland, a HS2 might be ideal for getting down. What do you think?
Well, I can definitely see the benefits of broadband, upgrading. Look at me at the moment, but I think at the moment, investing more money in education sector is not the best idea. I know Luke is probably crying in the background right now, but we have used education, or more accurately, the higher education sector, as a means of providing concentrated state aid to particular towns and cities, ones that are by and large already wealthy areas. So from where I'm standing, to concentrate on educational investment over infrastructure investment would worsen social inequalities. The benefits of infrastructure investment are not only evenly distributed, but quicker, and they also benefit all of society, not just those at university and living in well-off towns.
Okay, well, great. Thank you. So, Esther, I want to just jump on something you did mention earlier. You want about reinvesting the money into broadband and things. So, quick question for all of you. Do you think that broadband poverty will emerge as the next educational inequality measurement? Esther, do you want to go first?
Well, I've been talking about this for a while now: digital poverty, technical infrastructure, postcode lottery. This will be the defining factor of where you live. I also think going forward, a bit like we've got energy performance certificate for housing and where you live now, I do believe going forward you'll want the equivalent of a broadband certificate. Who's going to live there? It will reflect on the cost of your home, what you can do. I mean, this really is the key infrastructure project that our country has to do. And if people are working at home, exporting from home, connecting globally, this is our future and the next generation's future.
Perfect. Does anybody else want to jump in? Should we say Gabriel? Do you want to have a little chat about it?
I do think that working at home and studying at home are both very different in a sense. I feel like when you're working at home, sort of like the main goal is productivity. When you're studying, I believe that the goal is for you to meet new people, for you to develop these social skills. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, I do think that, I think that it will be, I still think that investing in broadband, in either way, it will be beneficial to people's education, because, I mean, with the internet, we've got so many information right at our fingertips. So I feel like, when people are learning a new subject, or when they do want to find out about something else, I mean, how many people during lockdown actually, I know so many people that tried to learn new languages through Duolingo and that sort of stuff. Now they had more time. So I do feel like it can benefit people educationally in that sense.
Perfect.
Can I just jump in quickly?
Sure.
There was a survey done, and this, I guess, shocked me, because it was about train use and people wanting to go back into cities. And it was the 20 to 30 age group who were wanting the least to go back into cities by about 70%. They thought this local community, so you would be mixing people going out, but it would be, as Ben said, whether it's in Mansfield or whether it's Rotherham or Bishop Auckland, people, it was a younger generation wanting to stay at home, whereas the 40s upwards were the more likely to want to go back into the city because it was something they knew. So I don't know if that is reflected by other people on this panel.
So, Ben, what do you think of broadband poverty? Do you think it will be the next educational inequality measurement?
I think it's really important, and the question for me is whether we talk about fibre broadband and all the rest of it. Is that a bit old hat? We talk about HS2 being obsolete by the time it gets built is part of the argument, and I think broadband almost is the same. I'm doing this off a mobile hotspot from 4G on my phone, right, and that's powering my laptop. I don't need fibre broadband. I've kind of advanced beyond it. I think we will have done by the time we've built it across the whole country. So that needs to be considered as well. You don't want to plough a load of money into something that's going to be kind of a bit of a waste of time by the time we get there. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I hope that's something we're thinking about. In terms of education, hugely important. My local college have found that it's one of the pros from lockdown in many ways, that by working remotely, actually they've managed to engage some of the kids who were least engaged with college before. We're all different. Some people go to learn, to study, to socialize, to meet new people, exactly as Gabriel said. Others don't. Others are really uncomfortable with that, and actually have flourished and in a kind of remote working environment where, particularly, take autism, for example. Guys who weren't comfortable raising a hand in a lesson will be more engaged via a laptop, and the attendance has been better for some of these guys. So lessons to take forward, definitely, for education. You mentioned HE before, and this idea that it kind of props up city centres. I think that's right. I think we need to really shift the role of higher education in particular. I use my own constituency as an example because it works. But Nottingham-Trent University kind of doing outreach into Mansfield. They're setting up a Mansfield hub at our college. You can do nursing degrees. You can do it all from our town instead of having to go into the city centre. I think universities have this massive economic clout, and the ability, therefore, to kind of really push the levelling up stuff and to try and help some of these more disadvantaged communities around them. Because one of the things we've really struggled with, back to a lot of Europe, where the kind of economic benefits of cities splurge out a little bit more into the surrounding town. We don't really do that in the UK. It doesn't really work. Universities have a massive role in that. I don't know about you guys on the call who are at uni at the minute. If it were me and I were being told I'd have to do it remotely for a couple of years of my course, I'd probably defer and not bother. That's a massive part of the experience, right?
Perfect, thank you. And finally, James, as a student yourself, can you see the inequality coming out with students that do have better broadband or worse broadband? What do you think?
Well, whilst broadband poverty, is a relevant factor in education inequality, the government has already helped with providing low-income families that do not have broadband with vouchers to purchase Wi-Fi. It's very commendable to see the Department of Education and BT working together on this. I mean, it is, I would say, worth remembering that the geographic element when it comes to broadband, Wi-Fi relative to wealth often ignores where poverty is, which is a point Esther's raised in the past. So disproportionately inner cities, which have had fast Wi-Fi for a while, and deindustrialized northern areas, which were prioritized for regenerative programs. Somewhere like, say, Rishi Sunak's own constituency of Richmond is a wealthy area, but broadly speaking has rather poor Wi-Fi. So though this is being improved rapidly by 95% of people nationally, they can access their internet super fast now. I will say, though, that I wouldn't be opposed to the Wi-Fi voucher scheme being made permanent.
Okay, great. Okay, so we did ask our audience whether they think that money should be going towards infrastructure projects or whether they should be going towards fibre optic broadband. And the results were really interesting. It was split in the middle, pretty much 50-50. People weren't sure. I'm going to get Josh to display the results now, hopefully. And I'm also going to pass over to Liv now. She's going to give you some quick fire questions before you come back to me.
So I have 8 fun quick fire questions surrounding school and education. So Esther, starting off with you, what was your favourite school dinner dessert? So what we'll do first is we'll go to Esther and then we will go around the group and everybody will share what they love to eat after they'd had their lunch.
Apple pie and custard.
Ben, what was yours?
That cornflake tart stuff, with the jam, and then amazing. Amazing.
Gabriel, what was your favourite dessert?
Is it bad that I never had dessert at school in my
Oh
whole
yes,
entire
it
life?
is. That's a shocker.
Never lived.
No, it's because I moved to the UK when I was 9. So when I got in year 5, I was like still not used to the food, so I just brought my own packed
We don't
lunch.
want your
So I missed out on the
excuses.
fun. I missed out on the fun.
Pink
But
custard, man. You've missed the whole thing.
I missed the whole thing. I've got to make some homemade at some point. I'll go ahead and do that.
We'll sort you out. We'll sort you out. James, what was your favourite school dinner dessert?
Christ, it's been so long.
I've never heard of that.
Crumble,
Buddy.
probably.
Okay, second question. So, what was your favourite and what was your least favourite subject whilst you were at school? Gabriel, we'll start with you.
So before I did A levels, business, politics, psychology, and Spanish, my favorite subject at school was probably geography. Hello,
Is it
can you guys
on?
hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're all good.
Hello? Hello? You guys hear me all right?
This is why we need new broadband, guys.
No, just saying geography because I love trees and I love maps and I love the earth. So yeah, geography.
Geography, because I love trees. Great.
Okay, Ben, what was your favourite and least favourite subject whilst you were at school?
I'm a sports nut, so I only went because of PE, to be honest. It was the only reason I bothered. Least favourite, probably. I'm very wordy, right? I'm not really a numerical person, frankly. So maths and science, not my cup of tea. Something where you only need to know one fact and then you can blag it. Far better.
Esther, what was your favourite and least favourite subject whilst you were in school?
Okay, diametrically opposed to Ben. Maths was my favourite one. Maths and science was my favourite. And then diametrically opposed to James, geography was my least favourite one.
I'd just say maths was my least favourite as well. Sorry, Esther.
James, what was your favourite and least favourite subject whilst you were at school?
Christ, well, I'm inclined to agree with Ben here because I've always liked a good rugby game. I guess I'd probably say my favourite is politics because I like a good argue. My least favourite, Christ, probably drama because I liked it before GCSE, but then I realised there was actual work involved. You know, I spent 2 years of my life growling like a cat and writing about the emotive connotations behind it.
Oh, great stuff. So, for our third question, if you could go back to school, what subject would you wish that you would be taught again? Esther, we'll start with you.
A language, actually. I think I'd like to do French again.
Ben, which one do you wish that you could be taught again?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it was one of those at school where you don't really necessarily see the point at the time, but actually learning a language opens a whole new range of doors, doesn't it?
James, which language do you feel like you would, which lesson would you like to be taught again?
Let's go with history because I studied at university.
Gabriel, which subject would you love to be taught again if you had to go back just a matter of years?
I'm not sure because it was only like 2 years ago, so it's not really been that long. But if I had to pick one, probably RE, religious studies. I don't know, I just really enjoyed that. I thought it was really interesting and I definitely enjoyed to learn that again.
Good stuff. So next question is, what was the best non-academic lesson that you have learned? So Ben, we'll start off with you.
What, just in life?
Yeah, so like a life lesson.
The thing for me, I recently kind of took a bit of a step back from Westminster and dropped out of some stuff and tried to do more locally. I think the biggest thing for me, the age I am now, I'm getting on, is just about my kids and they're only the age they are once, and I'm gonna kind of relish it and enjoy them. I'll never get that again.
Esther, which non-academic is the best one that you've ever learned so far?
So life lesson, I guess it's if we're talking a life lesson, it's don't be in a rush. Sometimes you'll be so busy trying to get somewhere, you either won't do it properly or you'll miss all the wonderful things around you. So if that was a life lesson, then that would be it. Don't be in such a rush.
Absolutely.
Gabriel, what's the best life lesson that you have learned so far?
This musician, he talked about this thing called the 2-hour rule, and that is every single day, you wake up about 2 hours earlier. Obviously, it doesn't need to be 2 hours, but you just wake up 2 hours earlier, and you go see your family, you go see your parents, maybe you see your uncle, your aunt, and you just spend time with them, and you just enjoy the life that they have. because in my opinion, family is one of the most important things in life. So I think that that's a really good one, to enjoy the people that you have in your life. So just wake up a little bit earlier, go see them, go have coffee with them. So yeah.
James, which is the best life lesson that you have learnt yet?
The best non-academic lesson. Probably not to wear shorts every day, because you get a reputation for it.
And dodgy tan lines, James.
Hey, dodgy tan lines.
That's something good, yeah.
Great stuff. So after that, what could be described as emotionally deep question, we will move on to something a bit more lighthearted. Now, this question could also potentially, in essence, send your approval ratings as MPs down. Ben, what is your favourite, or what is your go-to party song?
So for me, right, might be a bit niche. Maybe the thing that we kind of danced to at my wedding, and it always kind of sets me off now, is a song called "Shut Up and Dance."
Yes.
Great tune, right? Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant song.
Hester might not. Generational.
Esther, what is your go-to party song? What gets you on that dance floor?
I guess usually it's not the music, it's trying to get away from somebody. But I don't know, I like, something happy. So the song Happy would probably get me up there. Something that is sort of fun. But I don't really, as I said, it's just to sort of do it rather than be drawn by something.
Good stuff. James, what is your go-to party song that gets you on that dance floor?
God. It's probably not played in any clubs nowadays. Great Balls of Fire. I like that song.
Gabriel, what is your go-to party song?
The music that I listen to, which no one knows about, which actually gets me really hyped up, is metal. And no one knows anything about metal, but that's what gives me a lot of energy.
Right,
Not even joking. I got a bass right there. And honestly, just anything, and I listen to metal gets me pumped up. But if it's party, classic party, probably Delirious by Steve Aoki. Probably that one.
Very nice. Very good. So on to our next question. This will be quite an interesting one. Is what was the biggest craze to go through your school? So Esther, what was a big craze when you were at school?
Hitting 13 and snogging.
Oh, I love that. Ben, what was the biggest craze to go through your school?
Wow. It helps you, Gabriel. I had Blackstone Cherry on in the car on the way home. That might make you feel a bit better. For me, I'm of an age where it was blooming Pokemon cards on it and all of that. We were mad keen on that.
James, what was the biggest craze to go through school whilst you were there?
Biggest craze. David Gork once visited. That was crazy. Trying to think.
If the craze that went around school was anything to do with
Smirnoff
David
Ice.
Gork, yours was different to mine.
Yeah, let's go with Smirnoff Ice. Everyone knows that.
Yes, we do know. Oh, them were the days. Gabriel, what was your biggest craze to go through school whilst you were there?
I remember in year 6, me and my mates were just kind of like started wrestling. And all of a sudden, you got the whole of the year 6 boys and the whole of the year 5 boys, just this like fat wrestling club. Everyone would just get around there and just like wrestle each other. And I actually got into a lot of trouble with that. But honestly, that was some fun times, not gonna lie. But that was the one.
Just raced again.
I remember
in the playground, Gabriel. I swear I nearly broke a kid's neck doing some kind of tombstone thing when I was about 10.
Oh yeah, the tombstone. Yeah. Some kid threw. There was this little like tower area, this like little woodland tower sort of thing, and this mate of mine legit threw another friend of mine out of that woodland tower and like fell on his back. So it was pretty brutal, but good times. Do what you got to do.
Good stuff. So another one, nice one. Ben, what was your fondest memory whilst you were at university, college, or school?
The best bits, the bits you don't remember. It's hard to say, to be honest. I was a bit of a sports nut, and I went to like 3 different universities. So most of my life was spent on the hockey pitch, to be honest, which was always great. And by the end of it, my wife was pregnant, and I was adulting, and all the rest of it. So it was a wide and varied experience, my university. But no, I don't remember the good bits.
So what was your fondest memory of university, college or school?
I really like people, so I think it was always the first day back, and that would be whether it was at school in the September, aching to get back to see everybody, whether it is after a holiday at university. So I think it's that moment of seeing everybody again.
Good stuff. James, what was your fondest memory through university, college or school?
Fondest memory of school, probably finishing it. I was so eager to get out and just go to university.
Gabriel, what was your fondest memory?
I remember my school back in Brazil from when I was up until I was 5. It was insane. We had stuff like toucans in our school, and we just had like all these like really, really insane things. And even though I am a Brazilian and I was born and raised in Brazil, seeing those things was really like magical. Basically, seeing this like toucan, seeing these animals at school. So yeah, probably that time of my life, I'd say.
Lovely stuff. So next and last question. So the best piece of advice. Now you've got to give this in. So do it roughly. I'd say let's do it in like a shorter time frame that you'd give to somebody starting university next month. What is the best piece of advice that you can give them? Ben, off to you. You said that you've been to uni quite a bit, so.
Too many unis. Go and do everything, right? Try everything, because you only get to do that once with that kind of. You get responsibilities and you've got other people to look after. So make the most of it and get involved in everything.
Good stuff. Esther, what's your best advice to somebody that's going to go and start uni this September?
Know why you're going there. Too many people go there and don't really know why. And then I think it could be 3 years of expense of just being lost for 3 years. Really know why you're going there.
Great stuff. So James, obviously you are you're kind of coming to the end of your journey now in the next year. So if you could sit there and you could go back, what was your best piece of advice that you'd give to somebody?
At school or university? Which one was it?
At university. So they're going to uni. What's the best piece of advice to give them?
Right. Probably not to eat before rugby initiations.
Oh,
practical.
And Gabriel, what advice we'll change this up a bit because you're not quite at uni yet. So what advice do you wish that somebody would have given you?
For what? For uni or for?
Yeah, just before going, like what is one tip that you've learned over the past week of looking at things? What is the one tip you wish somebody had given you?
I don't know. There's just so many different things. I mean, uni is such there's so many things that happen at uni, the people, the course itself. I'm doing a year of placement. So there's all these different things, these opportunities. So I'm just kind of like sitting here and I'm listening to everything that everyone has to say because it's all going to be taken into consideration. Especially for me now, which I still don't even know what uni I'm going to because of the whole thing that happened with the grades. So, it is very confusing times for me, but I'm just kind of like, I'm just listening to all of the different tips about subjects, about business, which is what I'm studying, about everything, about the people. So yeah, anything really, to be honest. It's all good. It's all good information.
I'll tell you what's worth saying, Olivia, apologies to interrupt, but as somebody who employs people, the biggest thing for me when you look at, because like literally 50% of people have a degree now, is what else have you done? Which is why I say get involved in everything. Like it's the extracurricular stuff that will get you places more so than the degree.
No,
I think that's a big thing to think about.
Definitely.
No, definitely agree with that. I've certainly, in personal experiences, made quite, had a lot of fun and gained a lot of experience through doing societies myself, and then doing bits of stuff like course rep and setting up a Tory sock and all those sort of things that really do enrich you as a person at this point. So we'll move on now to our last round. I will hand over to Abby, who's going to take you through our last question of the event, and then we will have a quick Q&A with Ben and Esther. Over to you, Abby.
So our third and final topic is, what can students expect when they return to school, college or university in September? And is now the time to challenge the way the educational system works and make changes? So Esther, do you want to kick this off?
Well, I think people probably don't quite know yet what is going to happen when they go back in September. Obviously, I'm a strong advocate that you must get back to school in September. Obviously, lots of the schools have been looking about how they are going to accommodate all their pupils. So if you've got a big school, 2,000, they'll be looking at the logistics. How do you get in and out with social distancing? How many people do you have in the room with social distancing? How is the teacher going to react? Who else is going to be in the room? Will you have support teachers in there? And the curriculum itself, which I'm will be now an advocate of week on, week off training, so that every child gets to see a teacher, that if you are off school and you are going to do the blended learning, that it is checked when you come back the week later, because most big schools do not think they are going to have every child in every day. But what they do know is they cannot lose the most vulnerable children. They cannot lose those children who are most susceptible to being maybe caught up in gangs, caught up in other sort of activities. And I think that's what we've got to look out for. So I think everybody's got to be kind when they go back. I think everybody's got to look out for one another when they go back. But I think there'll be a lot of opposition. There'll be a lot of unions not wanting to go back. There could be teachers questioning what's going on. The only focus we must have on is on our next generation of young people, and however we're going to teach them. As I said, that blended learning, I think, will probably be blended, online as well as in person, I think could be with us for a long time, because we've got to look after staff, we've got to look after individuals, but we have to look after our next generation of people. And like I said, if you believe in social mobility, opportunities for all, you would get children back into school and getting them supported.
Thank you. So Gabriel, obviously you're starting university, so you're actually transitioning to a whole new system, I'd say. So what are you expecting when you go back in September? And do you think this is time to maybe change universities, or did you like them before? What do you think?
Look, to be honest with you guys, if I found out that it was mostly online based working, I wouldn't be happy, because when I'm thinking back to my highlights in school, at college, when I was at college, everything, obviously the academic stuff was great, but the most important part, and the part that I'm going to take with me for the rest of my life, is the lessons that I learned through meeting the people. So I would accept, and I think it would be fair if it was a mixed system of online and in person. But if it was solely online, I would feel, I appreciate the circumstances and everything, but it would be, for us to not at least try to have some socially distanced format, it would be difficult. And in terms of if it should change, I actually think that lockdown, not lockdown in particular, but coronavirus has torn so many things down. And if there is a time to change, it would be now. So, I don't know how we would be able to change education, what would be the things to change education. But if people do think that this is the time, then I would advocate for that time to be now, because this is the time for the recovery. But yeah, I'm just hoping that when I do go to uni, it's still going to be, it's going to be fairly normal. I know that, it's not going to be super, it's not going to be like how I was expecting it to be, but it's definitely going to be I just don't want it to be fully online, to be honest, personally.
Yeah, definitely. So before we move on to Ben, just really quickly, we obviously asked some of our Beyonders this week whether they thought that their university teaching should be all online, should be half online and half in person, or whether they would prefer it to be as face-to-face as they possibly could. So we did have 195 people saying that they would prefer to have pretty much the whole course face-to-face. We had a massive 370 people say that they wouldn't mind if they had some face-to-face and some online, so the hybrid system. And out of all those results, we only had 8 people who said they would like the whole of their university course to be taught online. So Ben, what's your opinion?
Yeah, I agree with Gabriel that the social side of it is equally important, and particularly for most 18-year-olds, leaving home for the first time, right, and going and live on your own and be kind of independent. That's as big, if not a bigger, learning experience than the course. So I think for me, like I said before, if I was told that my whole 3 years were going to be online, I don't think I'd bother. And I think some universities have really jumped the gun in terms of making decisions about that will be detrimental to them. Practical reality says that we're going to have to find some happy medium, aren't we? Particularly for this first year. And most universities are doing a decent job of that. I think you'll be, in lectures a bit, and there'll be some stuff you did online. And frankly, that's probably better. There was a lot of times you would go into a 9 a.m. lecture on a Thursday, having been out on the Wednesday night with whatever club or society or whatever, and think, God, why am I here? And maybe some of that stuff can get done online, right? A lot of us did that particular bit online anyway, because it was easier than getting in on a Thursday morning. So there'll be a better balance, I hope, going forward, and we'll learn lessons. A lot of this stuff will stick. Like I said about my college before, they found that some students engage better online, and they've learned more, and they've been able to get on better. Personally, I think that when you go further down in terms of age, primary schools, I think they need to be back in school, and I think they need to be back in school normally as possible. Whether you have class bubbles or whatever you have, but those kids, all kids of the key stage 1 kind of age group, that social element is so important, and will affect their development all the way through. Every study that exists says early years and those first years at school are so vital. I don't think we have any choice but to get them back in school, and primary schools should be better. Young kids, they have smaller catchment areas, they tend to have smaller student populations. So I hope that's doable, and I get the impression that's the commitment that's been made.
Yeah, perfect. So James, as a student, obviously you've already experienced a normal sort of time at university. What are you expecting when you go back in September? And do you agree or disagree with these changes?
Well, I mean, I've been informed by my university that's majorly going to be, socially distanced lectures, and the work, Zoom seminars, etc., face masks, so quite restrictive. But I think, Gabriel and other students don't have too much to worry about. I think you will, regardless of the clubs being closed, you will experience a good first year at university. But I think it's important to consider the possibility, of a work from home economy now. We need an education system that is better at instilling an individualistic sense of achievement, to go from an education system designed to have teacher input throughout the day to one in which there is only teacher input if you actively seek it, will do a great deal to prepare people for working from home. Right now we have an education system that is, it's designed to ensure nobody is left behind, but in practice that has meant that the exceptional students have been held back. It doesn't work like that in the workplace, and it shouldn't work like that in education. But, I have to say that I am, on the whole, optimistic that the government will appropriately individualise education.
Perfect. So a lot of you did mention you would be happy with a sort of hybrid system. But if that did come in place, obviously half of the learning would be online. So do you think, just quickly, that university is therefore value for money, and should we be paying the same amount?
Of course not.
Sorry.
If it's online, it should be the price of an online degree, like an open university degree. And this, if you're talking about the revolution that should happen, I think it should be the value for money. It should be going online. It should be courses that are shorter, courses that are maybe relevant to business or what you want to do. I think you could make smaller modules of education. It doesn't have to be a 3-year degree. I actually think if you look at that online ability to learn, that could be able to revolutionize the whole way in which you do things. And of course, it's got to be much cheaper and value for money, and that would open up opportunities for more people as well.
Perfect. Gabriel, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, paying full price for university when you're not getting the full price experience doesn't really make too much sense. And I think doing it online does remove many of the overhead costs and many of those other things that will normally be associated with, obviously, how much money needs to be paid for a uni and all of these different things. So I do personally believe that it would only make sense that the cost of going to uni would be reduced if it was to be more online. Do I think it's going to happen? No, I don't actually think it's going to happen, but I think it would be fair if that was the case, personally.
Okay, perfect. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, sorry, I just been before. I don't know what happened there. So for me, I think ultimately government don't set those fees, right? They set the upper limit, but it's universities that decide on the fees. So from that perspective, as Gabriel says, I don't think it will happen. Yeah. The thing to me, the bigger point is, in the longer term, to try and help people to realise and to assess with more information and more facts at their disposal whether it's actually worth the money. And this drive to get 50% of people to go to university when we know that a third of them will probably not get decent graduate outcomes at the end of it, should be making us all reassess as to whether that's the right route for a lot of people, whether actually, and I think government's getting this right, frankly, certainly in terms of the narrative at the minute. Is there a better route, FE, through vocational training, through apprenticeships, that isn't going to land me with that debt, that will get me better job opportunities at the end of it? And, to me, that's the lesson to learn from all of this. Perhaps it brings it home to people making the choice this year in particular. Is this going to be the right path for me, or actually is there a better alternative that isn't going to cost me that money?
Perfect. So just to end this discussion, we did speak to some of our Beyonders and we did ask them whether they thought that university should be full price or not. And I would say maybe slightly surprising to some people. 371 people agreed that there should be a reduction in fees, but 201 people also disagreed that there should be a reduction. So I think there's quite a lot of people that disagree as well. So I think that's quite an interesting point. Anyway, I think Liv and I are going to, if possible, ask Ben and Esther just one final question. Just quickly, that some Beyonders would like to hear the answer to, if that's okay.
Depends what they are.
Great, so I'll kick off. So Ben, before you became the MP for Mansfield, you had both public and private sector experiences. Anybody that's worked in both will know that there are different working cultures and different working environments. So which one would you say is more useful than the other, or would you say they are of equal importance?
They're definitely of equal importance. I think, we've got to deliver public services, we've got to support enterprise and business, and the fact is, I think they need to do better to learn from each other. One of the big battles working with local councils and all these institutions that are ever more powerful and independent is that actually often they suffer from a lack of kind of business knowledge and experience. You've seen in Nottingham City recently, they tried to set up an energy company and made a right mess of it, Robin Hood Energy, that they've ploughed millions of pounds of taxpayers' money into, because they're not business people and they don't understand what they're doing. You need both. You need the experience from both, and they can complement each other. So to be honest, I think the more we can take down the barriers between the two and have both sets of experience in trying to deliver things from a government perspective, the better.
Amazing. Thank you. Abby, over to you.
Esther, the question we had sent in for you was, to what extent did your prior career in the media and journalism influence your knowledge of political presentation? How did it affect the way that you present yourself to the media?
If anything, I guess it could have given me more confidence to be myself. Has it altered who I am? No. But has it maybe allowed me to be myself? Then yes, because everything is about practice, and the more you practice, the better you become. But what I'm noticing now, with everybody on Zoom all the time, or with everyone, Microsoft Teams, you're now used to speaking to fundamentally a camera to other people who are around you. So I think we're going to have a whole generation of people who are feeling at ease and comfortable speaking to a lens or a camera. So I think it was more practice. And I just think the lesson in life for everybody is be true to yourself and try and be yourself, because most people are more likable and people warm to them when they are being themselves and not trying to be somebody else.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So I'm just going to hand over to Luke now to close for us.
Amazing. And thank you so much to everybody who is watching this event, also to our fantastic panel. We've been extremely privileged to listen to Esther McVeigh, Ben Bradley, James Ussell and Gabriel Brawley. The one thing that I've certainly noticed, the overarching kind of theme from the event this evening, has been that there is going to be an exponentially negative impact on different parts of the community in education because of COVID-19. And it really is incumbent on the government to think quite cleverly and strategically about what they can do to make sure that particularly working class communities and rural communities are not on the back burner when it comes to this new post-COVID world we're moving into. But I must also say, we're extremely privileged to have two MPs, McVeigh and Ben Bradley, so unashamedly advocating for these values in Parliament. It really is important that we get this right as we leave lockdown, and we really do need to put education at the heart of the recovery as much as the economy too. So I'd just like to thank everybody else who's been involved. A massive thank you to our hosts, Olivia and Abby, who've done a fantastic job, but also to Hanan and Josh behind the scenes who've been running everything, particularly Josh, who has done all the streaming and technology this evening. So thank you very much. I'd just like to finish by saying we are raising money for a fantastic charity this evening. It's called Shine. They are dedicated to literacy and educational disadvantage in the northeast of England. We're suggesting, if you can, to give £2 each to this fantastic charity. They do some amazing work. I'm going to donate after the event as well. We will keep the page open. You can do so, but please do, if you can, give a couple of quid, and we'd really, really appreciate it. But thank you very much. Thank you again to our amazing panel and our delegates. Thank you, everybody.
Hi, my name is Isaac Woolmer. I'm the Secretary of the Conservative Society at Leeds University. Our society was heavily involved in the general election of 2019, helping re-elect the Deputy Chief Whip Stuart Andrew and the election of Robbie Moore, one of the new Conservative MPs of 2019. As a society, we hold various social events throughout the year, such as visits from Member of Parliament and political figures. We have pub quizzes, curry nights and our famous Otley Run.